Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, partners of Access to Energy. My name is Henry Gonzalez, and I'm going to compete with the surroundings that we have. So apologies if I scream, but I think it is important to have a loud voice as we are trying to reach those that have been left behind. I am very honored as the Deputy Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund to have this opportunity to introduce this conversation. The Green Climate Fund is a partnership organization at heart, and Acumen is one of our strongest and I would say more innovative partners. Today, we're here together in the SDG7 Pavilion, and this is a second visit because I had an SDG7 Pavilion visit last year. But the good thing is that today we have action. We have action to show that we're not just talking, we are walking the talk. And this is not just the Green Climate Fund. It is also Acumen leading us. It is also Power Africa supporting. It is also GEAPP. It is also the private sector, Shinhan Bank, and many other partners. And the Green Climate Fund is a catalytic investor. We are here to help crowd in, but most importantly, we're here to work with our partners to reach the most vulnerable. And our mandate is very easily implemented with partners like Acumen. And I cannot talk about Acumen without talking about Jacqueline. And I think for everyone here, not only is Jacqueline that energy behind SDG 7, but she's also the one that allows us to push frontiers. She brought me and our previous director to her home for a dinner where we pitched this idea with Ji Woo, who's also partner in crime, and that was less than a year ago. And here we are today signing one funding proposal that was approved in our board in the summer. If some of you have heard how difficult it is to access GCF, how slow we are, please tell them that now we're shifting, and it is thanks to our partners that we're trying to be better. We've got a huge mission. We're very excited because the Green Climate Fund is going to start a new programming cycle. We've been very honored to get a replenishment of $12.8 billion for the next 4 years. And we want to thank all the contributing countries who are represented here, especially those that came in the last few days, the US included, Italy, and Switzerland, who allowed us to go above the 10 billion that we raised before. However, we don't do anything with capital if we are not mission aligned. And projects like Hardest to Reach, bringing solar energy to Africa's most vulnerable communities, is exactly the prototype of what we want to do and want to do more. GCF is the fund that hopefully will crowd in public and private capital, but also the fund that is going to partner with others to get rid of the fragmentation in climate finance and allow us to work better with scale and always focus on those that need us the most. So with this, I'm very honored to introduce Jacqueline to the podium for her to provide us with always a very insightful and motivating and inspiring conversation. Jacqueline, over to you.
Thanks, Henry. And we really are competing with a lot of noise. So just so appreciate that you are all gathered here. And Henry, just huge congratulations to you and Green Climate Fund for the replenishment. GCF is the most important and the largest climate. We can do it. Climate fund in the world. And it's just such an honor. And as he said, this has been a 2-year conversation, but really a year ago got very serious. And it's been done in true partnership with the different entities that I will be bringing to the stage and more. So it's also wonderful to see friends, superhero entrepreneurs, other partners in this room, because you're the ones that have done the hard work for so many years to get us to where we are. So, we are facing a planetary level market failure. while the people at the COP, including us, are talking about the green transition, a just transition, 675 million people around the world have no access to electricity. 75% of that number are individuals who live in about 24 African nations, mostly populated by young, aspirational, talented people who need and deserve opportunity. And it's a big deal, particularly given the headwinds facing these nations. The 22 countries that are considered the hardest to reach have extraordinarily low electrification rates. Let's just face it, it is hard to build a vibrant economy when you have an electrification rate of 6% like Chad, or 14% in Malawi, or even in those countries that are at 45%, which is the top level for hardest to reach. If you go to the rural areas, you see electrification rates like 5, 6, 7%. That's what we want to focus on. Then you think about all of these young people and the fact that Africa's population as a continent is expected to double, so 25% of our shared humanity will be African in not too long. And yet, investment in Africa went down 40% last year. But I would like to imagine a different world. Imagine the flip side. Imagine what could be. When you worked in solar, off-grid electrification, it's not that hard to do. We've lived it. It starts with the dignity of flipping a switch and seeing your house illuminated with clean, bright light, rather than depending on dirty, expensive, dangerous kerosene. Families that have household solar stay up on average 2 hours more every night. That's time for gathering, playing, talking, studying. It's 2 extra hours of life, of living. It's a big deal. But the solar companies didn't just bring light to low-income communities. They built markets. The beginning, of course, was cell phone charging that allowed then smartphones. But then, at high cost, going into places where markets haven't fully existed, they built distribution systems. Those distribution systems have allowed low-income people to access critical goods and services like cook stoves, and television. And as people gained more income, solar irrigation, solar refrigeration, which allows for more income generation, and over time, vibrant economies to form. So this is a story not just about electricity, but about economy. Also, sometimes when we talk about off-grid solar, people think important but subscale. And I really want to refute that, because the first investment in off-grid solar was made in 2007. A relatively small number of companies and a relatively modest amount of financial capital has created an industry that has brought light and electricity to nearly 500 million low-income people across this planet and created 500,000 jobs. These are good jobs. These are jobs for people who ultimately can build careers. I know personally through Acumen, because our portfolio of 43 companies have reached 230 million low-income people. This is possible. It is not in the realm of dream. Think as well about what this ecosystem starts to look like. Off-grid then turns into call centers in collaboration with mobile banking. Then you start to see what it actually means to distribute not just light, but cook stoves, which has a massive impact on deforestation, on health. Irrigation and refrigeration is about food systems, productivity, income. When the solar companies first produced televisions, I have to admit, I was a bit skeptical. I wondered, were we going to be part of motivating consumerism? But one of our education companies, Akili Networks, which is the first all-education television channel in Kenya, now reaches 13 million kids every day because of solar television. It's a big deal. What I'm really talking about here is the adjacent possible. You start by solving one problem, electrification, and that opens up opportunity to innovate and bring other solution sets to solve other problems, which is this overall green energy ecosystem that allows us to actually enable people to solve their own problems, change their own lives. So there's a lot of good news here, despite the dire numbers that we're looking at. The technologies are there. The entrepreneurs are there. Increasingly, we're seeing funders who are there. What's missing? The right kind of capital. Because the truth is, and every entrepreneur in this room knows this, that capital is most expensive to those who can least afford it. Capitalism is a powerful system. These private sector companies have proven that you can deliver critical services by looking at low-income people not as passive recipients of charity, but as people who want to solve their own problems, have agency, be customers, build from that perspective. But doing that against all the headwinds that companies are facing, and with a 25, 26% financing cost, really hard to do. It's our financial system that used to work and now is failing us in an interdependent world, and it is certainly failing low-income people in those far-flung communities. There's good reasons for it. Even our development finance institutions are structured in such a way that they are beholden to shareholders, whether they're Congress or parliaments, so that they've got to return interest in addition to capital. They're intended for impact, but when the rubber hits the road, and the rubber always hits the road, they have to veer to returns. It makes it really hard for companies. And if you look at the last 3 years across the African continent, we've seen enormous headwinds, massive devaluation, inflation, climate change, which has caused droughts and floods, which makes it really hard to pay back your loans from these companies. Political turbulence. It is no mystery that 9 African nations have had coups in the last 3 years, though we don't read enough about it in the paper. And you look at migration, if you're young, opportunistic, and there is an opportunity, you're moving. And so this is about so much more than light and electricity. What we have to do is start to really reimagine, and Henry referenced it. We have to think about how we make markets work for us and not control us. And the crazy thing is, it's within our means. We built these systems. They're not all working now. We can change these systems. And it's why I'm so excited to be the one that gets to announce the Hardest to Reach initiative, although I literally am here representing an amazing team, unbelievable partners, and an incredible community of people who've been working for a long, long time to make this work. The Hardest to Reach. The idea is a not the idea, to Henry's point, the reality is a $250 million initiative of blended capital anchored by the Green Climate Fund that will allow us a whole spectrum of capital, grants, affordable debt that's structured in such a way that has an incentive built in so that when companies actually make good on delivering electricity to people living under the poverty line, they can reduce the amount of interest that they have to pay back into the facility. Equity. This kind of capital allows companies not only to have the incentives and the strength to go into difficult markets, but also to stay. And that is so important for the work we're doing. We've already made our first 3 investments in Benin, Sierra Leone, and are working on one in the DRC. But in 2024, really intend to start to move. And we couldn't be more excited. No one does anything alone, and bringing electrification to 75 million people across 16 nations in partnership with government, using blended capital with companies, requires a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnership. We couldn't be prouder to have partners like the Green Climate Fund, like Power Africa, like GEAPP, like Shinhan Bank from South Korea, and pioneering philanthropists that are part of this initiative, like Chris Hohn of the Children's Investment Fund. Ultimately, this is about short-term adaptation and resilience, which we've been talking a lot about at COP. It is so essential. But I don't want to also leave it just with that, because this is also about long-term mitigation. By creating green economies now, we put communities on a path to mitigate future emissions. That's a really big deal because it offers communities who thus far have been fully overlooked and frankly undervalued and underestimated the opportunity to build more prosperous, more productive, more beautiful, and more just economies that we can all believe in and feel proud of. We talk about these big numbers, though, 250 million, 75 million people that will be served. It's audacious, and we're really excited. But what does it actually mean when we talk about putting our humanity at the center? I think we all need to do a better job reminding ourselves by connecting with the people we are actually here to serve. And they too often get left out of the conversations. About a month ago, I was in Kenya with my board. And Kenya, by the way, is not a hardest to reach nation. It has done such an incredible job with the green economy. But some of the board members had not seen solar, though we've been working in solar for over 15 years. And so I called my good buddy, Ethan Kay, and said, hey, can you find a household in rural Kenya that we can just show up at today? It was a little nerve-wracking because he'd never been there either. We didn't know what we'd find. We went to this home, and it turned out that Susan was the head of households. And she welcomed us, as people do, and she'd only bought the system 3 weeks prior. And I asked her whether and if her life had changed. And what was fascinating is she talked about fear. She said, what I love about this system is that I put my first light outside the door. And now we don't fear bandits at night. We don't fear wild animals. I can go to the toilet outside and I don't fear stepping on snakes. I don't fear that someone will attack me. And when my children wake up in the night and they're afraid, we can turn on the lights. And then she talked about the fact that it takes an hour to walk to the market, where she used to have to go for her cell phone charging, and now she charges at home, and she charges her friends as well for a little income. Then I noticed that there was a television, and I said, I wonder if you know Akili Networks, always the promoter, and she said, yes, my daughter and I love watching Akili. And in fact, in the last 3 months, my daughter's learned, 7 years old, to count to 100 for the first time. She said, but I watch it too, because I have 2 hearing impaired cousins, and I'm learning how to sign on Akili, and for the first time in my life, I'm able to communicate with them. The adjacent possible. Thank you, Ethan. So the irony is the hardest to reach is within our reach. You hear a story like this and you realize what we're talking about is freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom to learn, freedom to have choice. It should be every human being's birthright. We know what happens when it's given. We're facing a planetary level market failure. And yet on the opposite side, it's also the biggest opportunity of our generation to show the world that together we can do hard things. But it won't take some of us, it will take all of us. So thank you all for coming. Equally, thank you all for all the hard work that you do to make this even possible. And here comes the future. And I want to bring up the partners we are most proud to be working with: Power Africa, Green Climate Fund, Shinhan Bank, and GEAPP. If you would just join me on the stage. So, can you still hear me? Let me start by, again, thanking these incredible partners and asking the question, because I've talked to a few people in media who've said, we love what you're trying to do, but who would provide the capital? And so, Henry, why is Green Climate Fund excited to be part of this initiative?
Thank you, Jacqueline. Can you hear me here?
Way back there too, I think.
Okay, great.
You gotta go really close.
Okay. So we were created at COP 16 in Cancun. And when a group of climate negotiators create a fund, some people don't know what's going to come out. However, I think in hindsight, fast forward almost 12 years, I think we've been quite lucky that we were created with a high risk appetite. And that is that those climate negotiators realized three things. One, we need to hear the need of the country. We need to be close to those that are feeling the impact of climate change. So we are a country-driven fund. Acumen and the entire team here is always working with the countries, engages with countries, understands how this project or this program helps reaching those NDCs that these countries took from COP21, and they want to make sure that they are going to be able to achieve it. So that is important. The second element is they gave us flexibility. They gave us flexibility from a risk appetite. They said you can do grants, you can do debt, you can do equity, you can do venture, you can do local currency, you can do anything. So that flexibility, I think, is what makes us different, because we are able to really catalyze our partners from the private sector or other public entities. And the third element, which I also think is extremely important, is innovate. Try to really help create markets, push frontiers, and don't do plain vanilla. And even though we do have some plain vanilla in our portfolio, as we were ramping up, I believe in the last 2 years, with partners like Acumen and others, we are truly, truly pushing that envelope. Today, on a grant equivalency, 54% of our portfolio is in adaptation, 46 in mitigation. If you take that in nominal, is the other way around, but 46% nominal already in adaptation is quite large. And out of that, it is also private sector. We have recently given ticket sizes that are large, 150 million, 250 million, to partners who are able to really bring that. So those are some of the ways that I believe make us what we are, but we are nothing without our partners. And we are nothing without our partners working close to our countries. And with this, I would like to finish. Yesterday, I went to the best panel I've been, and that was a panel with 5 ministers of Central Africa who were talking terrible things about international finance, and I think they were all right. But one thing I took away from the minister of Congo was they want capital that is equitable, that is available, but most importantly, accessible. And I hope GCF is going to honor those 3 objectives of capital access for the most in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Henry. David, Power Africa has been working in this sector for a long time, and we're excited to learn from and with you. Why is this a priority for Power Africa?
So, Jacqueline, we were in Nairobi a few months ago, and we were on a panel together about the hardest to reach, a Green Climate Fund organized panel. And afterwards, of course, I traveled back to Pretoria to my house with its new solar panels and Tesla batteries, which I'll take. I'm happy to have. I'm happy that somebody is helping me out, worried about my welfare. But I mean, come on, it's not just those who have, those that are the easiest to reach that should have access to reliable electricity. So we're so proud, so happy to partner with Acumen, to support Acumen, and the Hardest to Reach initiative, and to partner with Green Climate Fund, GEAPP, Shinhan Bank, and this small contribution, relatively small contribution from the United States government through United States Agency for International Development and Power Africa to scale climate finance, to have a catalytic impact, and to support the fastest and most sustainable solutions for people without access to electricity. I want to thank you for challenging us to be bolder, and I also want to invite others to join us and support this new fund. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was amazing. And I think that is a challenge. It's something my friend Hal is always saying. Be more courageous, be bolder, and you all make us more courageous and bolder, so I appreciate that. Bruce, Shinhan Bank, a commercial bank, decides to be part of an initiative to reach the hardest to reach. And we also have so much to learn from the rigor you've also already brought into the way we think about this. Why is this a priority for Shinhan?
Shinhan Bank is a leading commercial bank in Asia. Shinhan Bank is the one who committed to be natural bank for the first time in Northeast Asia. It took 9 months for us to study off-grid solar market in Africa. And after 7 committees, our investment committee approved the first private sector investment in Africa. Key drivers for us are that we believe in the needs and the values of grid solar product in Africa, and in the branded finance structure designed by Acumen and provided by GEAPP protect us from downside risk. And the last but not the least, Acumen is a very important our partner, trust partner, and especially for new market and new sector, especially in Africa. And I'm very proud to be here together with the other partners on this stage to congratulate H2R launch. And I look forward to the future with Acumen and for Acumen.
Thank you so much, Bruce. We do too. And I know we're hitting time, but Joseph Nyanga is started in this sector selling solar lights out of his own car. So this man is the real deal, and now we're so lucky that he is at GEAPP as a real partner in helping to build, because you're a man who deeply understands what this is all about. So proud, Joseph. Why is GEAPP prioritizing it?
So, Jacqueline, I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here to be supporting this. Many, many years ago, and I have to say this is incredibly personal. Many, many years ago, I decided I wanted to be in the renewable space in Africa because I knew what it meant to bring power to my fellow Africans. I started out looking at the grid and how we could supply power to the grid. But while you're doing that, you realize that there is a part of our community that will not be on the grid in their lifetime. So I imported samples of 14 different brands of lanterns, solar lanterns that is, including D-Light Planet, including Greenlight Planet, distributed them, put my cell phone number on every box so that I would get direct consumer feedback, and I settled on Greenlight Planet. This is not a commercial for Greenlight Planet. It's simply to state how we ended up there. And it was so difficult to raise money. I had to do consulting work on the side to be able to fund the business. But at some point, the consulting work and the solar lantern work needed a lot more attention, and I had to make a choice. I got up to 22,000 lanterns distributed, but to scale that further, there was no capital. I couldn't continue sustaining that growth by consulting. I had to choose one or the other. So for me to sit on stage today and be part of this is incredible. And that's why GEAPP exists. And I want to start by thanking my colleagues, Suman, Corey, and Stephanie, who have partnered with your team over 2 years to get us here. We have an incredible team at GEAPP, and I'm incredibly grateful. But we are able to do so because of our funders, IKEA Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, and Bezos Earth Fund. Together, we exist to address the biggest market barriers so that we can reach those who need it the most. I'm going to stop because Eric has more talking points for me, but I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Joseph. You're making me quite emotional, and I want to respect people's time. But change really does happen at the speed of trust. And I hope you all can feel that 2 years of really hard work with partners that have the kind of integrity and understanding and commitment that you all have, and real partners that have done work, and I've seen you at the highs and at the lows, is deeply emotional, and we need to bring our brains to this work. We need to bring the muscularity of our money, and we really do need to bring that sense of spirit that we're all connected to each other. And I've never been more excited for this world of possibility that we're now all part of together. And just thank you all. Thank you all for making it happen. And the teams from all of these partners, and I have to brag about Acumen, should feel super proud today. So thank you. Here's to lighting the world. And now, for those of you who could stay, Henry and I are going to officially, this is my first time doing this, sign a big document. That is worth $55 million as part of